All right. Well, everyone that was in the waiting room is here now, and it's 10:01. I don't know if you want to get a start on it already, but all right. So here's Lish Lindsey. She's going to teach us some awesome tips about the Marais.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, as you know, extremely early in the morning. And I absolutely love that you took the time to turn on your computers and get dressed and everything. So today's conversation is you are welcome to get off mute at any time to ask a question. I know we have a tight schedule to get through a lot of stuff, but raise the hand and I'll see it. I have everyone right now in gallery mode so I can actually see your faces and your camera pictures. So at least I know that I'm with other human beings. And Beth, I just saw your comment, so cool. This is a warm up, participatory, even if you're on mute, class. So if you do have a Baroque flute, alto flute, contra, whatever you got at your home, if you have it out and ready to play, you probably will enjoy more because I hate to talk to you for a good 50 minutes straight. And the more you can entertain yourself with trying some stuff out, excellent. If at any time you cannot hear me, please do that thing, and I'll catch someone, probably Nicole first, and then we'll try to fix everything. So I would love to start with a little PowerPoint. I'm assuming that many people know about La Folia in general, but just in case you don't, there's a rich history, and I think it's important for us to know that we are connected to history every time we play this in performance or just as a warm up. So let me move some of this out of the way a little bit. All right, can everyone see the wonderful PowerPoint? Yay, great. It's like being at school. Sorry, I no animations, none of that, but I did try to give a little videos inside, and if it doesn't work, we'll go right over to YouTube. So, first of all, La Folia is a maybe number one melody hit that has been through all time. For whatever reason, common people, rich people, have all embraced this simple tune. Now, there are two different types. There is the earlier La Folia, which means the madness, right? And we often hear the madness of Spain or the follies of Spain. And so the earliest version, let's say we're in Portugal, 15th century, and then it travels throughout the world. I always find it interesting that it makes the jump to Mexico. So you see how food travel, how people travel, this travels with them. The first one, anyway, was much faster. So I have a small example of a fast type of dancing to this. Let me know again if you can't hear it. So we often hear this, we play it, we don't always have a dancer. So if you're considering using this as part of your rep, get a dancer. It'll give a whole media type feel to it. But I love that video because you get to hear a little bit of the influence, and I think that is extremely important. So that's even though it's later version, often it's just dancing, peasant dance, people just spinning everywhere, just probably falling down as well. They might have been drunk, not sure, but it's celebratory. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. Now, for us, we have embraced the later folia. It's much slower. So even 100 years difference or so. The general key is in G minor, doesn't matter, but it has traveled to different modes, different tonal centers in minor. It is a saraband, so it's in 3/4. We all know that from Bach, right? The original viol da gamba version of Marais is in D minor, and it has a lot of variations, 32. So if you go to IMSLP, you'll find one of the longer versions, and you can create your own kind of like dinner party of choosing different ones that go well together. In the Baron Writer, if you happen to have like this copy, which I guess this is I see. Yes, Jeff, excellent. Sorry, loud. This has a great program notes in the back, and it says, Marais was like, any instrument, including the flute, can play this. There was no restriction. So not sure if that was like a publication thing, get more people to buy it, but it is okay. So you don't have to worry. I don't know if the flute is appropriate for this. We champion it, and we champion it well. On the left side, you see Adam Young, who is an ensemble player in a Baroque group. If you knew Susan Graham, she plays with him. But I played a concert. We weren't on the same program. We were on the same program, but not the same piece. But I had harassed him in the hallway and said, "Can I please take a picture of your beautiful viola da gamba?" And specifically for this, I don't get to see instruments up that close. And so one is part of the scroll work at the top, and you can see the string and the frets. It's absolutely beautiful. So if you haven't seen a viola da gamba in a while, this is originally what the song was written for. So Marais, we know him, I guess, off and on for various things. La Basque, that James Galway likes to play as an encore, is from Marais. So you might have heard that before. You can Google it. He lived a nice long life. I guess if you work at the palace of Louis XIV, the Sun King, and the 15th, you can eat pretty well and you get to live, so which is good. He did write a lot, but a lot of his music was lost through history. He had many children. One child was actually a composer as well, followed in his footsteps. And he studied with Lully as well as Saint Colombe. And Saint Colombe is an interesting figure in history that we don't know much about, except there's a movie that I'll talk about in a second. Marais also wrote 5 books of music for the viol. The Folia is from the second book. And I always like to list that there's a depiction of a bladder stone operation that you can find on YouTube. We won't listen to it, but it has it's very programmatic of someone having an operation back in the day. So if you want to see the humor that maybe Marais was either just having a joke about the whole thing, check that piece out. So La Folia in general, the main theme. Many people have used this, and this is just a handful of famous people. But as you could tell, if you're having it for hundreds of years, you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of composers use this theme. So most recently, our friends at the Socially Distant Orchestra played a combination. They all kind of improvised. And I brought it to the part where you actually see Susan Graham, which you know, and Sophia. Of course, everyone knows Sophia. And they actually are playing in this. And I just want to play a little bit of their rendition. Excellent. So you hear the theme. It's like an earworm that you'll never leave. I'm not sure why there's hand washing, but there was hand washing for COVID, I'm assuming. So very smart. The connection for us to make Marais even more real is there was a movie in the 90s, All the Mornings of the World. You can get it on Amazon. So if you haven't seen it, it's a period drama. And Gerard Depardieu stars as Marais. If you know him you're a certain age, you know him, as well as his son, who is no longer living right now. But his son plays the younger version. He's trying to impress Saint Colombe so he could study with him. St. Colombe is having none of it. His daughters are very enamored by this young man. So the person who recorded all of the music and arranged the music for the movie is Jordi Savall, who you may know through World Music Avenues. And he is from Spain and is probably the #1 person you will learn about if you're interested in this type of music. So we finally get to hear the actual viola da gamba, and his ensemble also does their own rendition that you can find on YouTube. And the final thing with the PowerPoints, why I find this is important that you know the connection of the music that you spend time with, whether or not it's performance or it's just for warm-ups, is that, again, you're seated now with a ton of other people who are also experiencing this. So at the bottom, there's folias.nl. It's a little sketchy website. It doesn't come up as really good security preferences, but if you are brave and you go there, it has lots of history, how the music has traveled, as well as all the listed known compositions that people have submitted that have used this theme. So if you want to become kind of nerd out on the flute, this is a great website. Use at your own risk. I go there all the time because I'm a dork like that, and I like taking risks, but give that a shot. So let's see. Let's move over to worksheets. And I think Nicole has some control if we need to reshare in the chat if you need this. However, since this is going to be up most of the time, if you can see it on your phone or your iPad, then we can go here. If you need a copy of this, I did list my email address that you can email me and I will send this to you. So, but don't worry, you don't need to actually have the music. If you do, I'll shout out which variations we're doing. So do I have everyone still? You can hear me. Great. And people have flutes. Ish. Yes. Okay. I'm so happy that you're here today. So this is why I love this piece, other than performing it and choosing various variations depending upon my mood, is I use this, especially over the last year, exclusively as a warm-up. I did the Paul Edmund Davies 28 Days. I felt like I've warmed up all I needed to warm up at the early start of the seclusion that we had. And then I wanted to move on from that to something that I actually really, really love with melodies. So the way that La Folia is broken up is basically this, the very, very top part, 16 bars or so. The chord progression is extremely easy. It moves very conjunctly, and it's very simple to memorize. So there's an organic nature of how the music rides. So what I would like us to do, if you have your flute or piccolo, or you could literally use a kazoo, whatever it is you have today, is I would love you muted, is just to play these two lines. So you can feel how your air is. You can take any speed, any tempo. The one thing I would love you to think about is not anything at all when you play. Just don't worry about your tone. Don't worry about attacks. Don't worry about vibrato. Just play whatever is going to come out of your mouth. I'm going to just play the first line, so you can either play with me or you can diverge from that, just to give you something to hold on to. But go through, play, and I'll keep an eye on the chat and as well as the people and see when everyone's kind of generally finished. So take a look at your key. If you want to transpose into a different instrument, you're welcome to do that. So the question I want you to ask yourself while you play through, how do you feel? Does the flute feel good to you? Perhaps as we move forward, you're going to pick like one thing that we're going to work on. But for right now, I am kind of feeling like, okay, it's early in the morning. My flute is still vibrating. Like I remember what the flute sounds like from yesterday. So this is a good sign. And all that to me, because I know that we can be hard on ourselves no matter what level of flute playing we are, we can be really, really challenging to us personally. So for me, this gives me permission just to be like, listen to this melody that was performed, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I'm doing the same thing. And yeah, I'm like, all right, it's working. So after I kind of play that main melody, perhaps I would play it up the octave, down the octave, change it by a half step up, anything to keep my mind into the mood that I'm feeling for that day. Then I start to do a little bit of work. So I know our time is valuable. So I try to pick like one thing. So as we look down, and this is from Flute Tunes. So Flute Tunes does have some errors, and you want to make sure that if it sounds a little bit weird, like there should be a D sharp and it says D natural, play the D sharp. You're probably absolutely correct. If you have the Baron Writer version, all of that stuff has been worked out. So Flute Tunes is great because it's free. Baron Writer is better because it's edited. Whatever you got though, because we're all on a budget. So looking at number one, oh my goodness, there are a lot of arpeggiated stuff. I don't have time for that in the morning. No way. I am just going to look at only the outline notes. So it's basically just the beginning, the large notes. And what I would love you to do is try to ignore the fancy stuff. The lower, the mordant that's there, forget about it. This is not a Baroque class. I don't want you to think Baroque style unless that is your thing. But I just want you to now take the rhythm that's there and just play a little bit without even thinking too much about time. as you go through, you can see at the top it says keep it simple, winky winky, right? Because nothing's ever really simple on the flute. Tone clarity, perhaps that is your goal. Maybe vibrato, no vibrato. Maybe you want to sing and play to open up the throat today. Maybe you want to do harmonics to kind of stretch yourself. I really love, if my ears are ready for it, to do drone tuning in the morning. And that gives me a good tonal center. So we would go to YouTube, for example, and pick up the tuning CD and listen to, maybe we'll set it on E, or maybe we can set it on B natural, something to have us go through. And then I'm going to listen to see how in tune I am in the morning. It gives me a little bit of something to latch on to. So for the first variation of this, always leave out the junk. We could put the junk in later, not a problem. Did anyone feel okay playing so far? Like it feels good this morning? All right, great. This is really good. So let's move down to the next one. And I know that these are pretty quick to get through, so you're welcome, of course, to kind of like play anything you want in the background here, just to get yourself warmed up. And if you're staying for the scale game comes next, all that, you're ready to go. Like all your tone is going to be there. So the next one I have is from variation number 4. It is Blow the House Down, is now what I'm calling it at this point, because I feel like I've been doing a lot with air direction. I know fingers are important for us as well, but in the morning or late at night, I don't want to think about it. I just want to think about air. And directional air is what creates our music. It creates our phrases. So here I have 2 parts. The one that's actually written from the score, and the other one is the general outline. And for the outline, what I did is make a choice. I make it simple. I only do 2 moving notes at a time, and I hold on as long as I want. Then I also make the choice about, am I going to get louder or softer? Simple. And if you're really ambitious today, you can think about, is your vibrato going to get faster, which is the squiggly in the middle? Or is it going to get smaller if you're going to get softer and work on a taper? So let's pick one of those things. I'll play a little bit of half of this and let you go ahead and play. And if there's a volunteer who would be interested in maybe playing like this very short version of the ebb and flow of the airstream, after I kind of demonstrate a little bit and you try it, I would love to hear someone's example. And if not, I'll move on. So I'm going to go for crescendo, and I'm going to go for like vibrato, getting really intense. So for example, so I'm giving myself time to breathe and to think. Give it a try, a couple seconds here, and see if that feels good for you today. And then if there's anyone brave who would like to give it a try and just let us hear without judgment how you're feeling through this very short little phrase, I would love to hear. You might have to raise your hand because I can't see everybody at the same time. Or Nicole could tell me if anyone wants to volunteer. Oh, I saw Beth come first. But Sarah, I saw you as well. So we'll do the next one perhaps. Beth, would you like to play like these 2 lines here?
Sure.
Thanks, Beth.
Just the ebb and flow, right?
That would be fantastic. It's beautiful. Yes, thank you for volunteering. So it's lovely. Like we have one little package of melody here. I know we spend a lot of time doing like Trevor Wise books or Tofano and Gobert that have so many slurs and Marais, where it's just coming down and up. There's not a lot of melody all the time because it's technical, right? We're trying to get our tone to be connected, beautiful, vibrato, pitch, all the sustained. Here, we can do the same concepts that we work on in all of our other technique books, but the melody is so pervasive that even if someone were to walk by your house, you're on the porch doing this, it's going to sound like you're playing like a ballad in this situation. It's nice and slow and beautiful. And the music making component, I think for me, is one of the most compelling reasons of why I want to warm up. It's not just about my face. It's about making a message. So Beth, again, beautiful. Thank you so much. Yes. Let's move on a little bit. And if you have questions, we'll have some time at the end. If there's a specific one or any of your insights also about your warming up routine. So, oh my goodness, it looks like I have a bunch of those squiggly worms that you eat, the gummy worms. Okay, it keeps me occupied. It keeps my brain like very amused when I look at this. The shh breathing. Sometimes if you're working in a lesson or you're working with your own students, we are trying to get them to be musical. And we're playing for them. We're demonstrating. You're playing stuff back. They're playing it back to you. The main thing I love to think about is phrasing through the breath. And basically, if you're not able to push your air the way that you want to speak or sing, then you're going to get a little stuck. It becomes all technical, all fingers, all just front of face. So I put various ones that work well for me, variation 2, 11, and 13. And you are welcome to pick your own one that you want to play a little bit of today, muted. I'll give you an example of what I would do for number 2 and to get the air moving. So I'm looking at the shapes, and I put the shapes to go up at the end, so I feel like it's not just a dead end, that there's continuation. But I only use my air. So you can finger or not. That's up your choice. I probably actually am not going to finger at all, but I'm going to create the shape that I eventually want to hear without even thinking about ornamentation. So for example, for number 2. So it takes a lot more air than I would be using when I'm playing. But I think when I start to play, I feel more connected. So if you would like to try, I'll scooch this down a little bit, maybe the first 8 measures or first 4. See if that works for you. It's almost like we're doing an extended technique of going shh, shh, shh. So really open mouth. You can use a lot of teeth for it, but see how that feels. And I'm very curious if anyone out there is like, this feels weird, or okay, I get this. If anyone would also like to volunteer, maybe 4 measures of one of these. I'm curious to see how the sh sound comes over a microphone today. It might be just terrible. I'm sorry if you're like, it's too much. Any volunteer who wants to just try the shh and the sculpting? Sarah, hey.
So you want the shush and
Yes,
not singing? Okay.
Yeah, let's go shh. Awesome. Great job. Could everyone hear how her air actually kind of came in and came out? So I bet that if you were to kind of like look at this as your next tomorrow morning's workout, not only are you going to be mentally prepared, your body's going to be physically prepared to do what you ask it to do for phrasing purposes. Then you can work out all the technical like finger stuff later as you choose. Let's see. A question so far? Okay, trucking forward. Yay. Phrasals.
Sorry, I do have a quick question.
Yes, Jeff.
What do the colors actually mean?
It means Lish was having fun with the pen,
Oh, okay.
Literally nothing. But
Okay.
actually, good question. The red that I underlined in the forte, if for score purposes, like for flute choirs, often I'll just, reds are loud. And even in my flute score, if I have like this type of piece that is for solo flute, I do the same thing. It's like all my reds are, I know a loud section's coming up. Blues I use for piano, light blue for mezzo piano, pink I use for mezzo forte, just to trigger my seeing point. And if you're trying to memorize stuff, I find it very helpful. For me, actually, the color, yes, I just like the colors here. They're fun. But the shapes and the fun, it actually makes me remember it more too. Because that act of drawing or trying to draw, I'm a visual tactile person sometimes. And this makes my flute playing just more enjoyable, I think.
Cool.
But other
Yeah,
than
thanks. I
that,
use a lot of symbols also. Like
oh, good,
I
I'm
have
not
my own
alone.
so I was interested to know what they meant to you.
That's so. I hope everybody else is giving that a try because it's more fun and it does help, right? Like just. So phrasal storytelling, unfortunately, does not have any fun colors at all, really. And I love this one. I haven't ever changed this one. Hippopotamus, as you know, often comes up when we talk about fives, and I always find it funny to think of hippopotami because they're very aggressive and they could kill you literally. But I'm thinking of more a cartoony, rounded one for this exercise. Usually when I get to number 6, my students also kind of flip out because it doesn't look enjoyable for them and they often avoid it. And to kind of get them over the bump, as well as to help the phrasing portion of this, I use this outline. So what I would like us to try to do, and if there is another volunteer, great. If not, that's fine, is that I want you to think of a hippopotamus sitting in various different ways. And I can imagine a cartoon one doing a whole bunch of things because there's no limitation to the realness of it. So for example, I'll play maybe the first line and see if it makes any sense. Sorry, I forgot the phrase kind of keeps going, right? So in my head, I was thinking like, okay, we have a hippopotamus, it's doing something, right? Then there's a lot of questioning about exactly if the hippopotamus wants to be doing whatever it's doing. So I would love you to try for a second, take a little bit of time, shape it however you want your hippopotamus to do something. And then we'll come back. If you use the phrasing of the breath from the previous one, and now you're in the hippopotamus one, I'm hoping that your tone is now suddenly becoming alive and really resonant. So in this case, you can always go back to just using the shh. Take a really nice, relaxed breath. And then do it, and then put your tone back in, maybe without vibrato, then add it with vibrato. Again, at this stage, we're just tone. Tone is created by our air, and then our lips are kind of like, and our teeth are the things that are going to allow us to separate the airstream to create different timbres, right, in our sound. So hippopotamus, this is probably the last one we have that's super relaxing. So if you're curious about articulation, we're getting to the next stage. So I hope this was kind of enjoyable. All right. So I know that all of us have different purposes, I think, for warming up. And at this stage, maybe it's about 5 minutes in, 10 minutes into your daily routine. You've done a lot. You've checked your sound. You've checked to make sure you're in one piece and mentally ready for the day. So at this point, you're probably like, okay, I need to work on articulation. It is essential to the pieces I'm working on. And therefore, what can I use the Marais to work on? Number 3 is great. It comes very early in the set. And unfortunately, it has like a lot of ups and downs, kind of like life. And sometimes if we start working on this too early, the ups are not as good as the downs in the music, or vice versa. So instead of just randomly playing, because I find that I get a little disastrous if I just run into it and start playing up the high stuff from the lower. I'm going to separate this into two things. And you could do gut and just do no articulation at first if your tone is really kind of funky and you're ready just to do kind of like a breath. Joan and Danny talked about this yesterday. So for their warm-up book, same concepts, all the same idea, right? We are universal in what we do. But they have a lot of written out exercises where it's just gut and it's just air happening for like Mendelssohn, for example. So you can do that. I'm actually going to do more the tongue between the teeth and to pop the air. I know that we don't ever play with this in regularity because it would just be impossible to try to play fast. But I know for things like if you're going to start, any soft up pull-ank is a good example, just to start and pull back. I don't know if you can hear the sound. You annoy everybody. It's like a soft pop. That will get suddenly your tone to just boop. It's right there without overblowing. But we have to get trained, the coordination to do it. So this is a very good one to get around that first. So what you want to do, I'll try to get up a little close here. It's slow. I know we're all used to playing more, doing it really fast, but we have to kind of slow down here, reset for every single note. So maybe you could try, if you're having a great low day, do the lower one. I think I'm definitely having a better higher day. So pick one of those part of the teeth and lips, but think about where the spacing of your lips, can you get it between your lips and your teeth, and get a nice little pop with your sound. And if there is a volunteer who wants to try a little bit, you're having like a really good effect for this, or you're just boss at this, please let me know, because I would love to hear your example, because mine's not so good. I think yours is going to be better, way better.
By Alan Gilbert on the radio this morning at WQXR. All capital coffee.
Anyone want to demonstrate their awesome, like between, very French style, between the lip, teeth, little pop in some of the teeth and lips part? Oh, Jeff. Cool, thanks. I love you. That's amazing. It's so clean. It's like, for everyone else, you notice how clean that was. It's like so spot on. I gotta raise my game a lot. So perfect. Do you have any tips for us to get such a clear, like, frontal?
Well, my teacher in graduate school, it was all about Tafnel and Gobert number 4 and building. Don't start with C major because you will hate yourself, but starting with A minor, because who wants to start on a low C? But really, it's all about the French tongue and keeping the tongue through the lips and getting it. And then when I work on articulation, I do a lot of for that. My big thing that I do in the morning to get my tongue going is and just to get the air moving over the tongue. And I find offset slurs to be really like a lot easier to do, and it just gets the tongue going, but then keeping it, just really forward.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. Having the slurs on other ones, this is actually, looking at it, because there's no articulation here, having that bridge as well, I bet this would work out really well, even though there's a lot of big gaps. All right, that's a perfect example. Thank you for volunteering. That was amazing. Let's move down a little bit. The tone outlining variation 18. This is just for bell tones. So if you're going to just do a lot of like, you can see like I'm pulling the flute away from my mouth a little bit. And I'm creating a little bit of a flat space inside. You can hear the pitch is like not super stable, but it allows me to have time to go wah wah, because sometimes we do need to create that sound, but it's often much faster in another type of piece. So here again, we can separate the lower part of the outline with the higher part and leave that out and then put it all back together. But I think sometimes we always should do some type of bell vibrato sound because we need to fit the vibrato into it, and just separating a little bit of it is more helpful than just trying to do a scale on bell tones, because that doesn't put any, it doesn't give you necessarily a melody. But here, this is just a little, I wanted to add that in here for us. So let's move forward. We don't need to play this together. The putting it together, thoughtful, clear articulation. Again, if you are now warming up and you are actually being very conscious of everything you're doing, you want to open up your warm-ups to something that's a little more complicated and difficult, but also something that is different. Because we've used the other ones for technical purposes and just tone and everything. So we want something new, so it doesn't feel like we're working at it really hard. But the harmonic structure that's underneath of this should always be familiar to us. So that's why we choose something different. We don't have to play this together either right now. Of course you can if you'd like, but I'm not going to go over too much of it. I would love you just to think about every time you play, is the note consistency where you want it to be? And try to note where are things like E naturals, can be very fuzzy, split, challenging in both registers. And perhaps looking at this, you do tend to see them here. Circle them, put a star, careful of how much air pressure. But you start wanting to look at this a little bit more with magnifying glass, I think, with how you're playing. How tense are you at this point in your warm-up? But pick something that is articulated. Try to play as many of them exactly the way you want them to be. And then if you're having trouble at this point, you probably would be like, well, maybe my airspeed's not fast enough. Maybe it's too fast. Maybe my fingers are slow. So you go and change gears and do something else instead. So you pivot when you need to pivot, so you're not constantly hitting yourself in the head with it. But this is about the time in the warm-up. You just want to try something a little bit more consistent and more as if you're going to perform this for a friend or someone in your household. The next set is all about double tonguing / quick articulation. It could be a fast single tonguing articulation. For anyone who knows this exercise, you probably know this exercise from somebody. I kind of revamped a little bit to have my T's and my K's switched because my students like it one way instead of another way. And often I keep this at the bottom, like I don't think about it too much, but I want you to see it for today right away, that our double tonguing is something that I feel like maybe it's a burden. Sometimes it's always on our back, right? But it gets better. So hang in there. I like to do this exercise for endurance and for clarity of sound, as well as to be able to stop the sound. So again, if you've done this exercise before, there's a lot of other things to it. I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. Nicole, I see you like, yeah, I know this thing. Definitely. I'm sorry I brought it up, but it works. It works. So for example, to prep my single tonguing / double tonguing, I'm going to do line number 1, and it's chromatic, or it could be diatonic, whatever you'd like. I get my students to go chromatically to like a low F, F sharp, not to a C that's mean and cruel, like Jeff was saying. It's just hard to get down there. Or we pop it up the octave if that is where it sounds best for you. But I'm going to try to be really dry and on the faster side. That's probably too slow for your double tonguing normally for most of us, so you might want to just bump it up. So if you want to try either of these 3 lines, number 3 just gets faster and it's longer. You can use dugga dugga, tiki tiki, tuka tuka, whatever your preference is for your face, but I try to keep less tongue movement, everything way in the front. Instead of taka 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 taka. I try not to get my jaw to move around too much. But give one of those lines a try. And if there's anyone who would like to give it a go and pick one of those lines and play for us, maybe just what's there, that would be amazing to hear how it is sight reading. Sarah, I can't tell if you're kind of like semi like, oh, we try it. And you're in my...
I'll try it if nobody else wants to do it.
Yeah, you can see everybody else. I can only see a small sliver, so I would love
yeah.
to hear. Yeah, let's give it a go.
Okay. Would you like line number 1, maybe?
That might be the most concise one to do, and they're not. Yeah, that would be great. Excellent. So as you start to work on something like this, the goal, definitely try to keep it as rhythmic as possible, keep the tongue light, but you can also improvise and create your own type of rhythm. The goal is just you should be doing something double tonguing every day a little bit, and something that you like. So that brings us down, like, okay, you promise not to talk about exercises. Yes, it's an exercise to get part of the music to be music. So we have so many in this one. There's a lot. You could pick your own. I maybe reserve to practice this a little bit later. I like number 8 first because there's only really 2 places where I can take off the slur. Do something where I'm only doing spiccato, little bits, kind of like the chunking concept, where I'm almost guaranteed clarity. Ta, 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 ta. And then I just eventually put it all together. When I'm feeling good, perhaps I want to work on the lower register, so I do the next one. So you could do that as well. And break it up. But the goal is to have these tiny little chunks, get the double tonguing to be fluid and the air not stopping, just moving forward. And then I think when you're doing your Mendelssohn or anything else that has complicated stuff that you need for an audition or a concert, that you are ready to go. But the entire Folia series has so many options. Just take the slurs out. If you're it's all slurred, just take them out. You have liberty to do all of this. Notice it gets harder. And if you want to work on your triple tonguing, this is a really good one, the very end, almost end one. Light, just like a little flam kind of movement. So you pick different ones every day. And then we'll play through it for fun. There's no reason why you can't play for fun. It's supposed to be music. Beautiful. Questions about the double tonguing, this whole thing. I hope it makes sense. It makes sense in my brain for some reason. Okay, so we had tone, double tonguing stuff, single tonguing, and the final thing that we have time for today is the third octave coordination underblowing. I always bring this up. I love it. I studied my undergrad with David D. Jacoby from Harrisburg Symphony at the College of New Jersey. And again, I don't know exactly where he got this from, or maybe it was Linda Chessis, I'm not sure. But he was always very adamant about having the connection between the fingers and the airstream. And what I believe he found is that most of us, when we're trying to play something difficult like Daphnis and Chloe, we are basically flailing our fingers around all crazy and our airstream is not as fast as it should be. And there's a coordination problem. So what he wanted everyone to do, and what I do all the time, is, oh, look, the little thing's in the wrong spot, is we try to have it underblown. So for example, we're going to look at the actual Marais. The little thing has shifted in a strange spot. So we're looking at the third line right in the middle. We have the F sharp. And what I'm going to do is very slowly play the fingerings that are in the upper register, but I'm not going to ghost it like you would if you're waiting an orchestra to play. I'm not sure if I'm playing the right notes, but I'm going to give as much as I can in the underblowing concept. It sounds insane because I'm giving full air and I'm only getting the lowest note that's going to come out. And so if I don't play the F sharp right or a different fingering, it's going to come out as a different note. Same thing with the high A. If I shift the fingers, it's a different tonality or a different tone timbre that comes out. So I can do this without annoying my neighbors. So then I put the air stream back in at the speed that I need to get those notes to come out. Oh, sorry about the C sharp, C natural. So what it is, I know my fingers are there. I just played it underblown. I'm not afraid of the height of the notes. And all I need to do now is fill in the tone. So if you could imagine doing this with classical symphony, something that's very difficult, Daphnis is a good example if you're going to use that. Sounds crazy. I know my fingers are there. I just heard it underblown. I feel more confident. I know that they're not lagging behind. Then all I need to do, my responsibility after that is like, don't get tense. Or I hate to say don't. Try to stay relaxed. Push the air through. You can do it. And then it's fine from there. So underblowing is probably the most important thing that I do to stay sane and to handle really complicated and fast passages. Separate two things that can be a mess together. And then usually it's okay in the long run. Not guaranteed, but usually. So maybe if you want to give that a try for a couple seconds here, you can either use some of the daftness if you're really comfortable with that. Just know that once you start doing the alternate fingerings for the third octave, like the D, the high F natural, the E sharp, that you're going to hear it there. It's going to sound crazy. And if you're unsure about how to do it in an orchestral passage or a piece passage, use it on your scales or chromatics in your third or fourth octave. Get it up there really smooth. And then more than likely, you're going to have more clarity and ease and mental ease as you do your basic scales. And if you have any questions right now about that specifically, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I don't think you need to necessarily see this right now. Cool. So if you have any questions about or you want to try to see if it's correct, I guess, with a scale for the underblowing, please let me know. Okay, cool. I guess not. Does anyone have any general questions about any of this? I'm going to pretend that's a good thing. Everyone's like, yes, I feel more warmed up for the next thing. That's fantastic. Well, if you, I guess, want to stay around, I know Nicole has to take care of the next set of things that are coming up. But if you have any questions, you can also throw it in the chat right now. My email address is on the bottom, so if you need a copy of this, just let me know if you couldn't get it from the chat to download it. And I do want to thank Nicole and Jeff, everybody at the Flute Club for hosting this online this year. I think it's very well needed. And I'm glad that even though we're separated, that I can still see people and interact. So thank you for coming to today's session. I really appreciate your time. Yay,
Thank you so much, Lish.
Thanks, Nicole.
What a wonderful creative warm-up. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye.